So to answer the question that I posed in the cold intro, yes. Yes, I could take the building, but it cost me 6 squads of men just getting across that lane. Their sprint crossed the merest sliver of an alert German machine gun squad's field of fire. An expensive jog, but what the Russians lack in command acumen and support weapons in Scenario 1, the Guards' counterattack, they make up for in numbers. The survivors enter the building and stomp out the remaining Germans there in both hand-to-hand fighting and a short, lethal exchange of fire down hallways and staircases. This old hex map and its tiny counters now seem lit from within. Getting to finally play this game feels like finding an old roadster in a barn and getting it on the road. A model still driven today by a dedicated subset of wargame lovers because they love this legendary system and its successor, Advanced Squad Leader, so much. Starting to see why. So a bit of background for our listeners who either don't know anything about war games or who think they don't like them, but who are wrong. Squad Leader was released in the 1970s by Avalon Hill Publishing, one of the 2 big strategy publishers of the time, the other being rival SPI. A whole generation of military history nuts who wanted to fight the big battles out for themselves with historically accurate units and conditions were relitigating the Eastern Front, the great 19th century wars of the continent, the U.S. Civil War, and more. There was a race to put out creative and rigorous designs that fed these subterranean armchair generals the right balance of scale, realism, and strategy that, also included interesting ways to model the chaotic chance of the battlefield. Squad Leader entered on the scene as a full-on squad-level, platoon simulation exercise. The main categories of action are mostly firing and moving, but almost every real-world consideration of those fundamental activities are governed by formal metrics. Did you move before you fired? What's your terrain in relation to your targets? How much stuff are you hauling when you move, and across what? How's your morale? When your rifle squad freaked out and ran, which happens in this game because sustained machine gun fire can riffle-shuffle anybody's nervous system, do they have to seek cover in Hex Kilo 5 or Lima 4? Every consideration is codified in a rulebook and reference cards whose tables look like they might have been purloined from the working real-life command HQ. Infantry fire tables, close combat tables, support weapons charts, movement, terrain, and even a droll little chart for what happens if you try to sneak around in a sewer. Roll a die. 1 through 4, successful. 5 through 6, lost. Think of the granular combat considerations of, say, Dungeons & Dragons, pointed at its operational essence, except you don't have to think up what your characters would say around the campfire. The action is the story, and it's a vivid one. But I don't have to think about sewers yet, thankfully. In addition to its dense but well-written rules and the cohesion of its modeling, the Squad Leader's designers also rolled out a tool they called programmed instruction. A series of 12 scenarios, 6 from the Eastern Front with the Russians versus the Germans, another 6 from Western Europe late in the war with Germans versus the U.S., and it feeds the complexity to you in spoonfuls. Well, they're big spoonfuls. Section 1 is a firefight in Stalingrad that only puts you in charge of men and machine guns. Scenario 2 lets you play around with flamethrowers for the first time, use demo charges, smoke cover, concealed units, and learn the quantitative joys of individual unit fanaticism, and so on until you're finally able to graduate yourself to even more complicated stuff like vehicles and artillery. God, I'm so fucking hungover. Where the hell is a paragraph? What's a paragraph? But even Scenario 1 is a beast if you come at it cold. Bigger beast if you have nobody who will attempt it with you. While simultaneously exploring my seasonal affective disorder, that's an amateur prognosis, and GMT's Storm Above the Reich over the winter, I sang this Jeremiad in episode 86. I was talking to dudes on Board Game Geek's Squad Leader forum about the copy of the game that the moms got me for Christmas in 1979. She knew I was into World War history and war movies because, weren't we all? I was 9. I opened it, gawped at each bit of it, put it away. Some of the dudes on the BGG forum mentioned a common denominator, my big brother and his friends. They got to learn it under the wing of some adolescents, and I realized it doesn't matter how cool these games are unless somebody is there with you, moored at the point of fascination and raised on the broth of brotherhood. And I stopped shopping a bunch of war games when I realized I wasn't shopping for a game. I was shopping for a big brother I never had, or friends I had and don't have anymore. End quote. As it turns out, I did have a big bro to teach me. When I repeated this complaint on Discord to longtime friend of the show, Noisy Andrew of Party Meeple, he made this thrilling claim. He knows all the rules for Scenario 1 by heart, notching a 100% accuracy rate when his last opponent looked up his rule citations. Now this was a lantern I could follow into this impenetrable cardboard Shangri-La. So we downloaded the Vassal Tabletop emulator. He even did the heavy lifting of figuring out the software and the squad leader module. We are now in our third week of successfully straddling the Perth-Starkville time zones for one-turn sessions. I'm having the time of my life. We're playing Scenario 1 for a second time now, and I'm getting a little bit grasp on the cycle of the turns and rules, and I'm learning to look for that one early exchange of fire that tells me I have to shore up a flank and keep my head down, or follow that wisp of blood in the water to a weak spot that's ripe for the chomping. I go to bed after we play this with footage drawing itself in my head. Even misfortunes that happened on my side of the ledger are vivid and weirdly satisfying. So now that Noisy has given me a working frame of the action sequence, I now have a reason to set up my physical copy at home so I can retrace the finer points of the rules. They're a lot easier to read once you've seen some action. My general experience with crunchy games is that digesting the crunch is not only a minor thrill of achievement, it delivers a richer experience, which is why what's happening here is way beyond a simple thumbs up or thumbs down proposition. Hex Encounter war games are a subset of a subset. On sight, these creations are either hilariously off-putting or they're as irresistible as the deep memory drumbeat of the sun that lures the characters of J.G. Ballard's The Drowned World south to vanish into the book's florid, mutated Triassic swamps. While I cover newer games, the level of passion and creativity in tabletop design is boggling. I've been digging backwards more in all my media consumption, as things redolent with real human work are more and more appealing as the automated, the synthetic, the simulated engulf everything. Why fret about whether the sludge I'm looking at on the feed today is human or bot when I can pick up, say, the Joseph Conrad book on my furnace cabinet and know a human made it? No guessing. No looking down the mirror hall. Regular consciousness and representing it with language, as we'll find in the wrestling matches of the great artists, is complicated enough. Why the hell do I need profit-motivated Silicon Valley mutants posing profit-driven additional conversations on top? The inexhaustible riches of the near past are there for the taking. Squad Leader is categorically beautiful for this reason. Looking at the hundreds of tiny cardboard counters, you can hear the chug of an offset press as the Avalon Hill team, probably wild with sleeplessness, watches the first proof run emerge. Reading the steps for managing a unit that's crumpled under fire, you can feel the long hours alone and the waypoints of fierce crosstalk as assumptions are playtested, and playtested again and again. Right as I finish this section of the script, I see the mail gal put a white package at the door of my edition. That would be the specialized Squad Leader counter trays I ordered. That means I'll be spending some time this weekend with a cold one on the table, happily clipping and sorting every single piece, fully immersed in the small and happy ministrations of one of the many small pockets of the world that VCs and private equity haven't figured out how to ruin. You'll never find me today, you bastards. Today I am unprofitable and therefore, if just for a few hours, free.